Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, another good episode today, the Sunday conversation. Something a lot of people have really grown on to, something I look forward to just to really be able to engage with all of you guys and really answer questions live. Today, we got a really good show, a number of different things we got to talk about. I put out a tweet today about why we shouldn't be surprised if Pitt has a bounce back year. And there's a reason for that as I've talked to a number of different people within Pitt, obviously, that talks about what their offense currently looks like and reasons why. We'll go into that tonight. Obviously, too, the starting quarterback. Who can we expect to be the starting QB? Obviously, it comes down to Nate Yarnell and Eli Holstein. Where are we at currently with that? And then more importantly, ACC news as well. Guys, before we get into it, obviously, if you have not done so, if you're on X, if you're over on Twitter, if you're over looking on YouTube, go down below, head on over to X if you need to, hit the subscribe button, and then also, too, hit the like button. It certainly helps with the algorithm overall with YouTube. Guys, of course, the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Guys, make sure you go over and see my good friends over at Colonial Beer. Obviously, two great Pitt men. Obviously, small business. We always support small business. Really good overall beers. Many different selections, whether it's your heavier lagers, your light lagers. You guys have seen me put out the tweets on Twitter. Very big selection over there. But more importantly, when you're in there, make sure you get the Fake Slide Pilsner, which helps support Alliance 412, which is the preferred collective of the University of Pittsburgh. If you've not done so, obviously, too, if you want to be involved in the meet and greet with Pat Narduzzi and Alliance 412, where you get to ask Pat Narduzzi direct questions about this year, this coming year, and also, too, what can you expect from Pitt? Make sure you sign up for Alliance 412. Become a member today. If you are a 1976 subscriber or higher, obviously it's 1976 for the general public. Obviously, as low as you can go, $19.76 a month or higher. You can jump on this call. You can jump on and meet Pat Narduzzi, but also, to have your questions answered live. It's a very unique situation, very unique that you're able to talk to the head football coach at the University of Pittsburgh and actually ask your questions, something that's on your mind, and get a direct response from Pat Narduzzi. If you have not done so, subscribe to Alliance 412, which is a preferred collective of the University of Pittsburgh. And again, please, guys, as always, go over and see my friends at Colonial Beer, located at 4986 the Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Of course, the selection, but more importantly, supporting Pitt men. Two great Pitt men that support the program at all costs. They're season ticket holders. They certainly do their part. They are Alliance 412 members. But more importantly, when you're in there, make sure you stop in and get an actual Fake Slide Pilsner. I'm not a big beer guy as it is, but I actually buy it myself, and it's a great beer. And overall, it does support Alliance 412, which is a preferred collective of the University of Pittsburgh. Guys, we dive into the comment section here. People already chiming in. Horns down, Pitt. Of course, Chicken 1515, Oklahoma guy. Really good person. Man, you got to let us know about the offense. Adam, we're going to get into it tonight. To me, Pitt will be pretty good. UNC will take a step back, way back. SMU won't be dry, won't be as good. Clemson will be 8-9 team at best. So I think Pitt's got a very mid-schedule at best. Daniel, I really disagree with that overall. I think it's a pretty strong schedule as it is. Clemson will certainly not be an 8 or 9 win team. That's a fact because of just how good they are. That's a team that's very good nationally. I mean, they're a top 5 team nationally. I don't know about that. That's a pretty wild statement overall, but I think overall it's a good spot for them. Who's taking the biggest jumps this offseason, whether physically or just putting it together? Ryan, we will get into that tonight. When do players report for camp? Players report for camp next week. End of next week, which will be really, really good. Obviously, not a political show, but however, rest in peace for Corey. Couldn't agree more. Daniel, rest in peace to him. And obviously, prayers out to his family. Hi, JJ. Appreciate the content you put out and the insight you have into the Pitt program. Watch a lot of your videos. But first time watching the live stream, Hail to Pitt. Steel Will 51. Thank you so much. The Sunday conversation has turned into a very fun event. I love it personally because I get to answer your questions live. So whenever you have something that's on your mind, I'm able to answer questions the best that I can. If you have not done so, again, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Two things that are both free and certainly help out with the algorithm and help us continue to grow as we continue to grow. Also, too, if you have not done so, I released a video last week with David McKenzie, attorney from North Carolina over in Raleigh, very much involved with the ACC realignment. If you really want the full facts on what that looks like, go into my portal on YouTube and you'll see it in the videos. You will see the interview with David McKenzie, 45 minutes of very good questioning, but more importantly, even better answers, especially, too, whether it's when Clemson and FSU getting out, UNC potentially, are they going to enter a lawsuit just like Clemson and Florida State? You get those answers. Also, too, what's it take to get out of the ACC? As you can imagine, it's a lot, but you'll be surprised the answer. I could see Clemson lost to Florida State and Virginia Tech. I don't think the Georgia game will be a game, and the ACC shocker of the year, Pitt beats Clemson at night. I hope so, but Daniel, I'm going to be honest with you. I do not see Pitt beating Clemson this year. Even if it is a night game, I just think Clemson this year is just going to be – they're a very good football team this year. I mean, they are back to being nationally just killers. All right, guys, let's get into it. The first topic of tonight, and some of you really already dove into it, obviously some of the questions we've got there. Why do I think, especially, too, with the tweet that I put out today, why do I think that Pitt will have a really big bounce back year when you look at overall Pitt 3-9 last year? Obviously, bad quarterback play with Phil Dracovic, even with how bad he did play. Pitt was in a number of different games, obviously just a one-score game on more than 5 games they played. Obviously, that's a big, big shift in terms of wins and losses. But also, too, just overall, the offense is not your Bill Walsh, 1980s offense. First year under Frank Cignetti, we still had 9 wins. You look at Pitt overall, 2 straight years of 9+ wins. Obviously, then 2021, Pitt had 11 wins, an ACC title, 20 wins in back-to-back years. But also, too, fans forget about this, and the national media does too. Pitt was ranked in the top 25 to finish both years, which is remarkable to say the least. Obviously, Pitt finished 14th overall in the actual ESPN college football rankings after the 2021 season. And in 2022, they finished 19th overall. When you look at, obviously, Pitt last year, again, bad quarterback play. The defense was on the field a majority of the time. I think a lot of guys really just didn't get a chance to actually attack the pass rusher because, one, we were behind the majority of the time because the offense was not able to score. I think when you look at this offense, though, and this team, I think it's a very big step forward in terms when you look at this defense. For me, when you know about this defense, obviously, we know about the corners and the edges. Everything that I've talked to and a number of different people within the football team, Nate Matlack has looked extremely good. And I mean, through the roof. Nate Matlack, obviously the defensive end transfer from Kansas State, obviously made the transfer because he was in a 3-4 defense, was looking for a 4-3, put his hand in the dirt, being able to attack the pass rusher. From everything that I've talked to and a number of different people that I've talked to, Nate has looked extremely good. He's going to be a tremendous starter for Pitt. I think, obviously, overall, he will be the best defensive end this year, potentially. I'll even put it out there, all conference, from what I've heard. That's how well he's been performing so far in camp and even in the spring and obviously even in the summer OTAs. Also, too, Chief Borders continues to show how well of a player he has done. And then we look at the middle in terms of the actual defensive line. Sean Fitzsimmons, Nakai Johnson continue to show really good strides. Obviously, Nick James, Anthony Johnson, Elliott Donald, Francis Brayu, the true freshman. We were able to keep him away from Michigan State. Obviously, that's a huge add. I think those guys overall look really, really good. I think when you look at our defensive line, I think people are really overlooking it. There's a lot of guys in there, obviously the majority of them, that were picked up by Charlie Partridge. Charlie Partridge, when it comes to actually developing and looking at talent, he is truly one of the best. It continues to be that way. A lot of talent on the defensive line. But also, too, it really has me really focused on the defense to where we're looking at a number of different great players, is the fact that you look at a guy like Kyle Lewis on that linebacker crew, who I think potentially has a chance to be all-conference this year. Braylon Lovelace, you've got Jordan Bass, Brandon George. I mean, just a number of different guys right through there. Obviously, 4-star linebacker Cam Lindsey. out of Aliquippa, who will be there this year. I think overall, when you look at this group from a top to bottom standpoint, you've got a lot of talent in that group. And I think overall, when you look at this group, it's very young, but there's guys that have a lot of experience in that room. Brandon George obviously leading the way when it comes to all the progressions, all of the actual experience that's in that linebacker room. I like Brandon George a lot this year. I think overall you'll see Braylon Lovelace really step up. Rasheem Biles, another guy who I think will have an outstanding year. I think just overall his development has skyrocketed just with how he's performed in the spring and in the summer during OTAs. I think overall when you look at this team, it's going to be. I like the linebacker room a lot. It's deep. It's young. You have to really admire it. And again, Ryan Manilock has done a really good job of building that room out to what it was, which was very slim at times. Obviously, you have the DB room. Javon McIntyre. Obviously, you have Donovan McMillan, the two guys that were really front runner that room. Donovan McMillan, he should be an all-conference player this year. I'm excited about what he can do. Obviously, Cruz Brookins, obviously out of Steel Valley. I think he's going to have a tremendous year. Jesse Anderson, PJ O'Brien, those guys, I think when you look at the safety room, there's a lot of guys that can play. You've got 3, 4, potentially 5 guys that can rotate in at the safety position. And then when you look at the cornerback room, Damon Lynham, Rylan Gandy, Noah Bigelow, Tamarian Crumpley, Rashad Battle. Then you also, too, have Shadarian Harrison, a guy who was a very highly rated player coming out of their class about 2 years ago. A very young player, but a very talented player. He can play corner or safety. I think he's going to get more time at corner just because of how deep we are at safety. I think overall, when you look at the DBs in the linebacker room, you've got to be really happy about how well Pitt has actually recruited, and you'll be able to see this year when it comes to development. I think they actually look really, really good. But it brings us to the offensive side of the football. People have been asking me quite often, what will this offense look like? Well, let me tell you, I've had a number of different conversations with people with Inside Pitt. I can tell you, guys like Gavin Bartholomew, they call him El Barto. I said, I tweeted out today, get ready to see El Barto in the El end zone. Can't tell you how they're going to use him or what they're going to do, but obviously I can tell you this, they are going to extend the field with a guy like that. I think personally, I think Gavin Bartholomew has the chance to be a breakout player this year for Pitt. I think overall he has learned the scheme extremely well. Again, you see, when you see guys like Nagy over from the Senior Bowl who have done a tremendous job. You look at Nagy overall, the senior VP and vice president of the actual Senior Bowl. I think we know the fact that he came out, talked about Gavin Bartholomew, his body, just in general, his athletic ability, being able to maneuver, especially when the ball's in the air, adjust his body, whether it's a back shoulder throw or he has to extend out for the football. I think he's done a really good job overall. I think this is an offense that's actually going to allow him to succeed, an offense that's going to allow him to get up and running. I'm really excited about what Gavin Bartholomew can do this year. Obviously, too, another breakout candidate, Konate Mumfield. We've been saying this for the past couple of years. Obviously, we were not expecting for as bad quarterback play as we saw last year. But overall, when you look at Konate Mumfield, a tremendous route runner, a guy that has great speed, really good with his hands. If the ball's in his area, he's going to be able to catch the football, has done a tremendous job coming back to the football when he needs to. A guy that you watch and you say, man, he's got a lot of talent. Again, Jim Nagy, a guy who was able to reach out and, again, talked about how he should have a really big year in Cade Bell's offense. And, again, Cade Bell, a guy who had the number 1 FCS passing offense the last 2 years in the FCS. I can't be shied away from. I mean, it reminds me a lot like a Joe Moorhead when he came over from Fordham, the FCS level. Obviously talked about his offense. It really translated to the Power 5 level. In this case, now the Power 4 level. I think he's done a tremendous job. And anywhere he's been, he's had a lot of success on offense. He continues to have a lot of success. I think he's a tremendous football coach. But you look at just the offense overall for Pitt. And we talked about the depth chart last week, obviously. But when you look at Pitt, one of the things that was very noticeable to me is the fact that when you look at their offensive line, your tackles are already in place. Your left tackle is going to be Branson Taylor. Everything I've been told, he's done a tremendous job of leadership overall in the offensive line. He has taken a leadership role. He has done a tremendous job of putting guys in the film room, understanding this new offense. But obviously, too, Jeremy Darveau, the new offensive line coach of Western Carolina, has really made his way and really made his name known in that offensive line room, being able to coach these guys up. And one of the things that really Coach Darveau has done a good job of is not just learn these guys from a football standpoint, but to understand who they are as people, who they are as actually men, young men outside of football. And they've really created that really deep dive into, personal relationships outside of football. And I think when you look at college football overall, the relationships mean a lot. They really do. They mean a lot. It really means more to these guys than what you would think. One of the things I always talked about as a player or as a coach or even in any industry in terms of business, nobody cares what you know until they know how much you care. And I think that Jeremy Darveau has done a really good job of really creating those relationships with the offensive linemen. It's a very close group. And I will say it's a very close group on the defensive line, too, with Tim Doust. Obviously, Tim Doust, the new defensive line coach of way of Eastern Carolina. Tim Doust did a great job with special teams at Eastern Carolina, and then obviously he did a great job at Syracuse when he was when he was a defensive line coach up there as well. But overall, I think when you look at the offensive line, your tackles are already set. And again, guys, I've already said this before, but offensive line play and defensive line play will really control and dictate what this team will look like along with quarterback play. I think when you look at your tackles, obviously at Pitt, Branson Taylor and Ryan Bayer are your starters at tackle. That's really who you have there. As a swing tackle who can play left tackle or right tackle, Jackson Brown continues to play extremely well. He will be valuable this year, a guy who will certainly get snaps because he's good enough to play, and he's a future guy in terms of the offensive line who continues to show progression, but more importantly, a guy who can really produce. So you really have, I guarantee you, we have 3 tackles that can certainly play. On the inside, a guy that I've heard numerous names and numerous things about, Lyndon Cooper, the NC State transfer, obviously can play center or guard. Football IQ through the roof. We talked about that a while ago. That was another thing that was brought up to me through a number of different people. Just his football IQ. He's an old school offensive lineman when it comes to actually being physical at the point of attack. Great footwork, very strong hands, physical, violent hands that you love to see, especially in terms of an offensive lineman. So you love to see that. Obviously, a guy in the middle there, Terrence Moore, B.J. Williams, 2 guys who will be major parts in what Pitt does this year. But don't forget about a guy named Ryan Jacoby. We talked about him a lot, where last year during camp, before he got injured, he was having a tremendous camp. His physicality and his presence on the inside was very duly noted. He's a guy that I think will actually start this year again, a guy who's a veteran, he was a transfer from Ohio State. I think he continues to get better. I think overall, when you look at the offensive line, you've really got 5 to 8 guys who can play and plug in. Jackson Brown, obviously, is a backup. Isaiah Montgomery, Ty Ray, a guy who's done a really good job at developing only a redshirt freshman. Terrence Enos, a guy that you can see, hey, he can certainly play. And then obviously there's the other guys that are currently back there as well. And again, I think overall the offensive line development has continued to get better. You saw guys last year, obviously. There were some guys in there that certainly struggled. Collier had his times. Even during the backyard brawl, he struggled a little bit at times, especially when he was pulling. I think overall, when you look at guys across the board, they got really good, valuable experience. B.J. Williams, a true freshman. Again, I talked about how hard it was for a true freshman to play. He was able to get on the field and be a massive force. I think his physicality, his footwork, I think he continues to get better and better. He's going to be a very valuable asset this year and will be a starter at right guard, in my opinion. But overall, the offensive line is in place. When you look at the quarterback room, the way that I put it to people, and people have asked me numerous questions here and there, back and forth, what does a quarterback room look like? And here's what I can tell you. It's a lot better than last year. Eli Holstein, from everything I've heard, has a major ceiling, a very high ceiling. And the same thing with Nate Yarnell. Regardless, I think that both Nate Yarnell and Eli Holstein present a lot of great situations. I think they're both 10 times better than Phil Dracovic. I think they're both better than Christian Veyer. One thing I told you about last year is that Christian Veyer threw a good ball. I just think that he just turned the ball over too much. It's really what it came down to with him. When you look at Nate Yarnell, he makes good decisions. He understands if it's not there going down the field, he'll be able to get his check down and be able to get 5 or 6 yards, and making sure he finds the right guy that really can gain yards, but also, too, knows when it's time to take that chance, understands the situation of where you are. I think he's done a tremendous job. I think Eli Holstein because it's going to be a quarterback battle. It's right now, Nate Yarnell going in is the guy that's really in pole position. The guy will get first team reps, but Eli Holstein is certainly pushing him. I think Eli Holstein, his ceiling is extremely high. He is a guy who's very valuable, an incredible asset Pitt was able to get. Obviously, a transfer from Alabama. Obviously, when you're down deep on the depth chart in Alabama, it's better to go somewhere else because, one, there's just talent across the board at Alabama. It's a very unique and rich place in terms of talent. I think overall, when you look at Eli Holstein, I would be shocked if he wasn't starting by next year, the year after. I think, Nate Yarnell has potential to really blow up this year in terms of really put up some big numbers and then make his way through somewhere else, whether it's the NFL draft or somewhere else. I think overall, though, the quarterback room, I do love it. And then obviously, as a third guy behind them, Ty Diffenbach, a guy who has really shown his ability to where he's able to maneuver the pocket, great footwork. He's got an extremely strong arm. One of the things that's great about Ty Diffenbach is he's a guy who's really able to, in terms of extend the pocket. He was a wide receiver in high school for a duration of time before he went to quarterback. That was a huge success for him. I think he's just very agile. I think he's got a lot of potential and a lot of talent. I think he can be a really good asset down the road as well. And again, when you look at the running back room, Rodney Hammond will be your number one guy. I think number two will be your Desmond Reed. And then number three, I think you got Derek Davis / Daniel Carter. And then obviously, too, you got Joel Goff still back there as well, along with Montrevious Lloyd. So you look at the running back room overall, there's plenty of rich talent that's currently in there. But the reason that really gets me going is this offense they're going to run. The one thing I want Pitt fans to understand, and I've heard from numerous different players, I've heard from previous players from Western Carolina. I've also heard from people within Pitt, current players, former players, but also coaches, talk about really overall how good of an offense that Cade Bell does run. He's also not a pushover. He's not gonna run into the political aspect of, hey, we have to play this guy because he's an older guy. He's going to play guys who will get wins and produce the best. That's really what it comes down to. And I think that one thing that players love about Cade Bell, he's extremely aggressive. He's extremely intelligent, a young guy who brings a lot of energy to this team. Jacob Bronowski certainly helps out with that. Lindsey Lamar certainly helps out with that. J.J. Laster, the new wide receiver coach, certainly helps out with that. I think overall, what I've seen and what I've heard, it really goes to show you're going to see a complete 180 from what you saw last year. This is not the Frank Cignetti offense. You're going to see a lot of creativity. You're going to see a lot of guys like Konate Mumfield, Kenny Johnson. Look out for a guy like this year, Dejon Reynolds. Dejon Reynolds continues to get better. I think people forget about him a lot. He's a guy who can certainly catch balls in traffic. He's certainly not scared to go up and get the football. Same thing with Kenny Johnson. Kenny Johnson, for me, I think he's going to be a breakout player this year. I think there's a reason why you saw in the spring game, even though it was very vanilla. Spring game is hard to judge because, one, it's just so vanilla. They're not going to show nothing, obviously, because it's on the ACC network, on a live network. But overall, there's a reason why they were giving the ball so much to Kenny Johnson. And I think he's going to be a major asset this year. I think he did a great job of staying at Pitt. He's certainly going to be used at a high level. I think overall, he is a future NFL wide receiver, but with his size, his tenacity, his speed, but also, too, his route running. I think he's taking that to the next level under J.J. Laster, the new wide receiver coach, who has really developed a number of different guys through there, just with different techniques in terms of coaching as well. We saw that just in the 1 year span with Brennan Marion when he was here, and they were able to produce at a high level. Overall, I like this offense, guys. I truly, when I talk to teams and I talk to players and I talk to former players and I talk to players at Western Carolina and coaches at Western Carolina, and you talk about people, even at Valdosta State. I went back to Valdosta State. When you talk to a number of these guys, the first thing that they say is Cade Bell is a very unique coach. He's able to adapt on a dime. He's able to run his offense quickly and efficiently on a dime, a lot like his dad, Kerwin Bell. Obviously, if you don't remember Kerwin Bell, the head football coach at Western Carolina, he was a quarterback. Where at? The University of Florida, the Florida Gators. Tremendous football player there. If you remember, Cade Bell was very much in terms of talks and very much an interest with the Florida Gators and bringing that legacy name back to Florida. We were able to acquire his services to be the OC here at the University of Pittsburgh. Again, guys, I like Cade Bell a lot and everything I've heard. And look, it comes down to how well the offense performs. But from things that I've seen in tangible evidence, I'm excited about this. And they've come a long way since that first practice at the spring ball. I can tell you that. And again, I think guys, when it looks to breakout players, I think it's going to be, guys like Kanate Mumfield, Kenny Johnson, Gavin Bartholomew, Nate Arnell, if he does start this year, and Rodney Hammond. I just think that there's going to be a major just onset of guys who produce at a major high level. That's just my opinion. Before I go on even more, let's check out some of the comment sections here. Obviously, too, Talk is Pitt. Hello, everyone. Mike Porosky. We've made it, fellas. Media Day Tuesday. Camp next week. Hail to MF Pitt. We all know what that means. Of course, Mike couldn't agree more. Here's the thing about Clemson. They will be carried by their defense. If Klubnik goes down, Clemson has nobody. Talk is Pitt. I disagree. I think when you look at just the overall roster and you actually dive into what Clemson has, Clemson's got a lot of talent. Clemson is a national top 5, top 10 team, answers down this year. And personally, I have Clemson winning the conference. That's just my opinion because it's how good their roster is. Who's your other D lineman besides Matlack to have a big year? Ryan, this is a great question. Again, I talked about Nate Matlack, but also, too, Chief Borders. But a guy that I think Chief Borders will do a really good job, but one guy that I want you all to know and who will actually have a breakout year this year, Jimmy Bear Scott. Let me tell you something. Jimmy Scott has continued to get better year after year, and he's still a young guy, but last year was proof in the pudding. If you go back and watch the games that he played, each game over the course of the year, he got better and better and better. And he comes from a great football coach up in New York. Obviously, they did a tremendous job developing him there and then coming to Pitt, where he continues to develop even more. Guys, I think Jimmy Bear Scott is going to be a guy who continues to take that next step and has a chance to be an elite level player. I think overall, Nate Matlack is going to be an all-conference player. That's how good he's performed in spring ball and in summer OTAs from everything I've talked to and everybody I've talked to in terms of how good he's been. Jimmy Bear Scott, a guy I think he's going to do really well this year. Chief Borders, but also, too, a guy that to watch out this year. I don't know if he'll be an all-conference player, but a guy that I think overall will continue to get better as the games go on, and he will be on the 2 deep, is true freshman, Sincere Edwards. We were lucky to keep him away from UCF. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job this year. I think he's going to be on the 2 deep, a guy who's going to get a lot of repetitions because he's going to continue to climb the overall depth chart. And obviously, too, you got behind him Bam Brema. Bam Brema's behind him, a guy who's been a veteran inside and out. I think he'll do a good job in terms of being able just to fill a role on this defensive line, especially defensive end, just to give you a body. But overall, I think Jimmy Scott, Nate Matlack, Chief Borders, Sincere Edwards, those are really your top 4 guys on the corners. I think those guys have done a phenomenal job. On the interior line, I think people are going to be shocked at how well Nakai Johnson plays this year. I think he really, truly found his niche, which is on the inside, the interior of the defensive line. I think overall, he's done a really good job at being able to transition from that outside spot to that inside spot. And I think Pitt has just done a really good job of developing the undersized guys at this, at the 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" level in terms of height, being able to really produce on the interior defensive line. And again, I think Sean Fitzsimmons is going to really be the anchor of that defensive line in the middle. I think he continues to show massive spurts of just flashes of greatness. We'll see if he stays on a continuous level this year. Obviously, Elliott Donald has continued to get better. He has done a good job of taking that next step. I expect him to get a lot of time. Obviously, too, hometown hero, just like Elliott Donald and Sean Fitzsimmons, Anthony Johnson, the transfer in from Illinois. I think he's going to be a really good starter this year in terms of being able to get time on the defensive line. He may not start right away, but I think he's a guy, he's done a really good job of putting his head down, not talking, and just putting in the work. And overall, I think it's going to be really good. And as a young guy, I see Francis Bradio getting time on the field this year. I think he's just a physical specimen. He's learning the defense at a rapid rate, and it just really has the attributes to really produce this year. So D lineman, I do like our D line. And obviously, I can understand there's a lot of questions because there's a lot of young guys. Francis Bradio, Elliott Donald hasn't shown a lot in previous years. Obviously, Nick James comes in. Nick James, another name to watch out for, the Indiana transfer, 4-star out of IMG Academy. He comes in, limited reps at Indiana. Sean Fitzsimmons, like limited reps. A lot of these guys have limited reps, but overall, when you watch them on a tape level and you talk to other people who have watched them play, and they say, "Hey, these are guys to watch out for. They've done a really good job." You got to mention them. Ryan, I think Chief Borders will take the other spot. I think Steve Will. One game that jumps out to me on the schedule is North Carolina. Do you think we can get it done this year since they lost May? North Carolina has been Pitt's boogeyman since joining the ACC. Not sure why. Steel Will 51, I agree. And in my personal opinion, I look overall, when you look at this team, I think that overall, I have the North Carolina game as a loss because, one, Pitt has to prove, and Pat Narduzzi has to prove they can actually beat North Carolina on the road before I count that as a win. So I actually had a losses this year. I had an 8-4 record overall earlier on. We were talking about each game for Pitt. I think overall, they have to prove they can win there first before I call it a win. That's just my opinion. I think overall, there's had some tight games there. They certainly have a chance this year without Drake May or Sam Howell. Really, you look at it, the last 6 years for UNC, they've had elite quarterback play. And you look at the ACC overall with the names that have gone through the grapevine here: Kenny Pickett, Sam Hartman, Sam Howell, Drake May, Brennan Armstrong. Now you have Grayson McCall, who comes up from Coastal Carolina to NC State. And then you obviously had your Deshaun Watsons before, your Trevor Lawrence before, your Jordan Travis over at Florida State. There's been just numerous names across the board when you look at these teams and say, you know what, the ACC has plenty of football talent, but surely quarterback talent. So this is a year they have potential to go down there and win a football game. But guess what? Like anything else, they got to prove it first. There have been numerous years where I looked at it and said, hey, Pitt should win this year. Obviously they've won a couple games here, obviously against North Carolina. No, the Kenny Pickett year in 2021 when we won there. Obviously, we had another win back even before that up here in Pittsburgh. But overall, to go down there and win, you got to prove it first. And for me, before I ever call it a win, they have to prove that they have to prove it first. So until they prove it, I have it as a loss. And that's why I have them at 8-4 for that reason. Jimmy Scott, couldn't agree, Mac. And that's why I put him on that list. Jimmy Scott, a name to watch. And I'm telling you, Jimmy Scott continues to get better and better and better. A young guy, he'll be a redshirt sophomore this year. He's going to be a guy who really makes a name for himself this year. And I really like him a lot. Our linebacker room is loaded, and so secondary, couldn't agree more. Kevin Collier, JJ, love the show. Hail to Pitt. Are you going to any away games? SMU will be a road win. Hope to see you there. Kevin, I actually will be going to SMU down in Dallas. I wanted to go down to there because obviously I love Dallas-Fort Worth. I love that area down there. So I will certainly be going to that game. Obviously, I've got a number of SMU people that actually follow the show. They have been begging me to go to that game, so I will be going to that game. But also, too, for people who need to know, I'm actually going to go to the Cincinnati game, which is over in Cincinnati at Nippert Stadium. Just need to finalize the tickets. Obviously, they've been selling tickets over there. It's a rivalry game. And it's guys, if you don't know Nippert Stadium, it's 37,000 seats. It's an extremely small place. It's hard to get tickets there for a rivalry game, if you have not noticed yet. So I got my season tickets for Pitt, but to try to get over there yet, it's a little bit tougher. So I plan to go to Cincinnati game, but also, too, I plan to go on the road to Boston College. First-year head coach at Boston College, Bill O'Brien's there. He did a tremendous job really saving Penn State's ass how many years ago, recruiting guys like Christian Hackenberg up to Penn State. He did a really good job at saving that program. Obviously has experience with the New England Patriots, the Houston Texans, University of Alabama. So I'll be going to that game as well. So really having the docket, SMU, Cincinnati, and Boston College. I'm still looking at some other games too, just in terms of work. My career is just busy as hell. And sometimes it's really hard to where you just have to adjust. So sometimes I can't go to some games I had planned for. But guess what? Here's a good thing, though. I will be at all the home games. So if you are at the home games, guys, Kent State, West Virginia, Youngstown State, who the other teams coming to Cal will be here coming across the country. I got them coming here. Who else is coming here? There are some other teams. Clemson, I'll be at the Clemson game, obviously. That'll be a fun game. Overall, if you do go to the games, guys, and you do see me, just grab me. Trust me. I'm nobody important. Just grab me. I always love to talk Pitt football and always love to meet you guys who support the show. And if you've really met anybody that has watched the show, I just love meeting you guys, man. It's a lot of fun. Talk is Pitt. I think Pitt may end up beating UNC. For now, it's an L. I agree. Talk is Pitt. I predict our O-line will move people this year. WRW Pitt. I agree 100%. Me too. Talk is Pitt. Tim Bales. What's up, JJ? Great show. Thank you, as always, Tim, and thank you for your support, for everything you do for the show. Guys, if you have not done so, please hit the subscribe button. If you're over on X, head over to Twitter. If you're over on Twitter or X, head over to YouTube, hit the like button, and hit the subscribe button. It certainly helps out the show. My man, Big D, Derek Burkheimer, if Collier plays at all this year, we're in trouble. He's awful. My old ass could do better than him. I love Big D. Dude, he calls it the way it is. I love it. The QBs have a pulse. The QBs have a pulse this year, not like last year. I completely agree. It can't get any worse than last year. I can tell you that. And it's not going to get as worse as last year because I've watched these guys and they're pretty good. Between Nate Yarnell and Eli Holstein, guys, we got two good quarterbacks that can play. This schedule is not difficult. The floor should be 8 wins and a ceiling of 10. Big D, again, I agree to some extent. I think some of the schedule gets a little bit harder. I had the floor at 6 because it's just a new offense, but also, too, I do have a ceiling at 9 or 10 just because of just how good this offense I think it can be. Again, I could be wrong, but from what I've seen, damn, I feel comfortable about this offense. Talk is Pitt. Jackson Brown is our best backup offensive lineman. And to be honest, probably is as good as the current starters. Also, Holstein to me is good enough to where if Yarnell started, we could still win 9 games. I agree. I think Holstein, his ceiling, from everything I've been told, from people who are within this organization, Pitt, have said his ceiling is through the roof. And that's how good he can play quarterback. And also, too, Nate Yarnell is that good as well. So, again, we have 2 guys that can currently play. PJM Rambler, I'm traveling up from Tennessee for the Pitt WVU game. Give me some reasons why Pitt will win this game. PJM Rambler. It's a good question and a great comment, so we're going to go into it a little bit here. Here's what I think, PJ. When you look at overall with Pitt almost, Pitt kept it very close. Obviously, last year at halftime, it was 7-6. I think, won these 2 teams. When you look at it, what's going on with both teams, obviously, just the offenses were absolutely horrendous. I know a lot of WVU fans will say, hey, Nico Markhill was a backup. He went into the game and just had to do what he had to do. The only thing that really concerns me about that is Nico Markhill was supposed to be a guy that competed for a starting job. So it's a little concerning to me about, where he is in his development. But overall, when you look at Pitt, the fact that their offensive play calling is completely different. They're in a different scheme. If we were still, I would say this, if we were still having the same offense with Frank Cignetti, I would count the WVU game a loss 100%. This is just old school. We won in 2021, which just tells you how much talent we had in that team. In 2022, how much talent we had on that team. But overall, this offense looks a lot better, a lot more fluent, much more up-tempo, where we spread the guys out, especially to the wide receivers. We push the ball down the field. Gavin Bartholomew will get a lot more touches this year. And guess what? At the end of the day, it comes to offensive line play and then quarterback play. We had guys last year that played and got extensive experience. I think B.J. Williams will be a major star on the offensive line this year. We know who Brenton Taylor and Ryan Bayer are, 2 former 4-star offensive tackles, 4-star offensive linemen recruited to Pitt. B.J. Williams, a guy who has been a stud since he's gotten here. Valuable experience he's gotten. Terrence Moore continues to make major progressions. Lyndon Cooper from NC State, everything I've been told is that, again, he's been extremely, really good. And he continues to show a lot of development, but more importantly, his attributes in terms of the run game and the pass game and not being shy and embracing violence, which is a great comment. When I saw from someone that said to me, he embraces violence, JJ, I loved it. Tells you a lot. And also, too, Ryan Jacoby on that offensive line continues to do a really good job. He's back at 100% now. He will be in that rotation regardless. But also, too, what it really comes down to is the quarterback play. I think Phil Dracovic, he just had the yips, man. I think that just, his first year at Boston College was phenomenal. Threw for over 3,000 yards, over 20 tutties, only 4 interceptions. He just mentally just took the yips. And I just think that overall, that was the worst quarterback play since the 80s. I think overall, it can't get any worse than that. And then you look at these 2 quarterbacks coming in now, Nate Yarnell and Eli Holstein. Guys, it's just, again, I understand you have to watch them play first, but let me tell you something. I was at that close scrimmage. I've seen a lot of tape. I'm just not concerned. I think that these guys have worked so hard because they hear the noise, guys. Let's be really open about this. They've heard the noise about how they're not going to be good this year. Those are the same comments that we saw in 2021 and even previously about Pitt, that they weren't going to be any good. It was going to be an off year. All of a sudden, Pitt goes off and has 11 wins. They did the same thing in 2022. Pitt goes off and has 9 wins, 20 wins in 2 years, and ranked in the top 25 back-to-back years. I just see a lot of parallel in what's going on these past 2 years, man. I really do. I think it's been a major parallel to where you're watching these players hear the bullshit online and see the garbage. And there's been a lot of quiet people online, and they've been dialed into learning this offense, but now perfecting this offense. Not even learning it anymore, perfecting it, and really are ready to take that next step this year. One thing I can assure you, this team has certainly heard the noise of them not having a good year this year. Guys, it is running through that building. I can tell you, there's a lot of shit running through that building, and they heard the noise. I'm just telling you, they're ready. PJ, WVU's defense is why I think Pitt will win. Yeah, WVU's defense, obviously, they lost a lot of guys, some starters up front, but obviously starters on the back end. Obviously, they lost, I believe it's Aubrey Burks, who was back there, who was no longer there. Was an All-American last year, no longer there. They brought in some new guys from Northwestern. We'll see how they turn out overall, but I think their defense, I just have to see it first. I just haven't been good on defense on Neil Brown in all 5 years. And obviously, too, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. In 5 years, they've had 3 losing seasons. The one winning season they had was 6-4 during 2020, which was mediocre. And then last year they went 9-4. And I just think overall, when you watch them, I just have major questions. If they win 9 games back-to-back years, then I have major respect for them because they've done it back-to-back years, like what Pitt did in 21 and 22. I just have major questions. They every team they beat last year finished with a non-winning record. And a lot of the West Virginia fans will tell me, what about UNC? UNC was missing half its roster and was missing a top 3 player drafted in the National Football League, and he happened to be the quarterback of the UNC Tar Heels. I mean, that's kind of a big, big miss, just being honest. Steve Will, I'm very torn on Yarnell Holstein situation. I think Holstein could be special, but Yarnell deserves a chance to be the guy. I agree, Steele. I really do. And for me, you guys have known. Last year, I got bombarded by Pitt fans. I was nuts for thinking Yarnell should play. I was nuts to think that they should take out Christian Veyer. Yarnell should have played all damn year. Call it what it is. And from people that I talked to, there was a lot of trust early on in the season because Frank Signetti, hardcore, that was his guy, was Phil Dracovic. And even after the first game, I liked what Phil Dracovic did in the first game. And there's documentation of it. And he showed good numbers. But after the second game of the year where it was under 40% completion percentage, that's a red flag. And guess what? Immediately when you see that, you need to make an adjustment if it happens again. Halfway through the West Virginia game, it was 7-6 at halftime. You played potentially the worst, besides the first 2 drives. You played potentially one of the worst offensive series, and to match WVU, their offense was horrific as well. But overall, you played a horrendous half in terms of offense. Your defense was playing lights out. And WVU scored points. Really, in reality, they scored what? They scored 10 points off a short fieldage, off of short fields, 14 points. I mean, shit. I mean, at the end of the day, we gave them points. So when I watched it at halftime, I was watching with a bunch of people, and I said, if Pat Narduzzi has learned anything, he should pull this kid right now, like what Dabo has done in the past with DJ. What's his last name? DJU. I call him DJU, but they pulled DJU, put K Klubnik in, and they won football games. The same way that Nick Saban in the national championship game. In the national championship game, the most pressure of any football game you're ever going to face, he pulled Jalen Hurts and put Tua Tagovailoa in. They won a national championship because of it. Jalen Hurts gets hurt. Tua Tagovailoa gets hurt the next year. Jalen Hurts comes in. He goes back and wins. It depends on the culture you build to where guys don't lose. They don't lose that confidence in them. He doesn't pull Phil Dracovic. He allows, Frank Signetti to call the shots. And that's why also, too, to the people out there that say, well, Pat Narduzzi's the one calling the shots on offense. That couldn't be farther from the truth. When Pat Narduzzi hires a guy, he lets him run his offense, and at the end of the year, they make a judgment call. Hey, did your shit work or did it not work? It's just how it is. Do I like how he didn't take him out of the game against West Virginia? No, I don't. I think it's bad coaching and bad judgment call on Pat Narduzzi and at the time, Frank Signetti. That was horrible on Frank Signetti. That kid immediately, when you saw him throw his first pick in the triple coverage, under no circumstance should that kid have been allowed to play any further. And we are all saying the same thing. If you had two eyes in your head and a functional brain, you could tell and say, hey, this kid is not good. The shit's not working. He needs out of the game. And Narduzzi allowed Frank Signetti to make his own call, do what he wanted to do, whatever, the facade. And then it was at the bye week to where Pat Narduzzi went to Frank Signetti and said, look, we're changing quarterbacks. And at that point, the season was lost anyways. So it really didn't give a matter what the hell you did. At the end of the day, as a head football coach, you need to make difficult decisions. And I think loyalty can kill Pat Narduzzi at times. He was loyal to Phil Dracovic, and he allowed him every opportunity to win those games. But guess what? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out and say after a 38% completion percentage against Cincinnati, shit's not working. At halftime during West Virginia, he couldn't even complete a pass. I mean, shit. They went down the field the first drive of the game. They didn't pass the ball on 3rd down and 1. 3rd down and 1 on the 3-yard line. They didn't even attempt to even potentially throw the football. I mean, that's ridiculous. You can't have a functional offense with a guy who has just, you're running around with a cattywampus offense because the guy can't throw. If he can't throw and he can't understand the offense, he doesn't have confidence, get him the hell out of the game. This isn't peewee football. It's not high school football. It's not junior college football. It's power forward football. You're in the trenches, and guess what? You're hitting people, and it's physical, and there's a lot of talking. There's a lot of booing going on. There's a lot of yelling going on. If you can't handle that shit, get out. It's that simple. And I think Pat Narduzzi needs to be better at that this year. If it's not working, you make an adjustment. There's no reason why he couldn't pull Phil Dracovic from the WVU game, pull him, put Christian Veilleux in, who I believe if Christian Veilleux goes in to play that game, Pitt wins that game. There's no question about it. He wins that game. He's a much more functional quarterback. It's 7-6 at halftime. You come out, you have a drive or two, you score points, you win that game. And West Virginia does not score those points off the turnovers. That's my biggest critic of it. And one thing that just irritated the hell out of me in watching that game. And it probably irritated you guys too. But overall, there's no reason why Pat couldn't pull Phil from that game and then start Phil the next week. It would have been the same shit. So that's one thing, and I think Pat Narduzzi is a good coach, but there are substances to his game, the way he coaches, like any other coach in college football, that they need to get better at. You can have loyalty to your players. That's one thing I love about the guy. They love playing for Pat Narduzzi. That is a guy, he has the players back at all times. There is no question about it. They love playing for him because he's a player's coach. But in critical moments of games to win football games, he needs to be better. Reminds me like in 2019 when he kicked a field goal at the 1-yard line against Penn State when he's down by 7. I don't care if analytics told you if it was 4th and 15. You got to go for it. It's just those minuscule ideas, and like he learned from himself. Later on that year, they went to Virginia. It was a slugfest. It was raining. It was 4th down and 2 on their own 30-yard line. He went for it to get a first down. He made the adjustment. Now it's making the adjustment with these other ideas. Just my opinion. WU defense for the 3rd straight year has to rely on transfers to fill over half their starting spots. I agree. Talk is Pitt. Wolf HD, what's going on? JJ, nothing much, man. What's going on? Daniel, why is West Virginia a poor state and yet we're the second in the nation in cost to go to a game? That is a great question, Daniel. I cannot answer that, but I can tell you this: it's going to be continuously expensive to go to those games because, as you know, Ren Baker, who I think is going to be a tremendous athletic director at West Virginia, just my opinion, I think he just has everything you need to be successful at West Virginia. His attitude, his demeanor, how he handles himself, great character. I think he's going to be a really good athletic director at West Virginia. He called the football stadium at West Virginia, Milan Puskar Stadium, an existential crisis because they need updates to that stadium. They're going to be getting a lot of updates to the stadium, suite seats going in there, a lot of suites and boxes. It's going to be expensive for a while, and they have to, I think, just overall for what for the lack of and just really the lack of enrollment at West Virginia that's gone down a lot. Obviously, the massive debt that's at West Virginia, and obviously too now across the board, I expect Pitt stuff to go up too because $20 million each year in revenue sharing. You got to look at it. It's $20 million. So it's something to watch. Let's see here. What other comments? And this is why our capacity is down. So many averaging more attendance. Daniel, I agree. It was the one thing we talked about recently. Just overall, West Virginia, again, very passionate fan base. But for a 60,000 seat stadium, there's no reason why they're only averaging 45 to 50,000 people at that game. It's West Virginia. I grew up going to those games. It was never always 100% packed. It was always packed for the Pitt games, but never packed for all the other games. I think overall, if they were in the ACC, they'd be selling out every game. Just my opinion. Just more rivalries and more teams they can root against. Dracovic passed for more yards than both WVU's quarterbacks combined. I'll have to look that up. I'm not sure that's right. In that game, hey, JJ, if and when Pitt gets their own stadium, do you think it would have seats or bleachers? Like a lot of college stadiums, we are spoiled at Acrisure. Mark, this is another great question. So I am very happy to answer this question because I think it's true. We are very spoiled. And to be quite frank with you, I agree with you, Mark. We are spoiled. We have individual seating. We're not sitting in bleachers like a lot of other stadiums. I've been to a lot of away games. I've been to a lot of the other schools. These stadiums are shitty. We're playing in an NFL stadium that is upgraded all the time, has individual seating. And the club, I'm always sitting in the club. I'm always there. It's a very nice stadium for college. It's a great venue. When it comes to Pitt Stadium, I think if they were to build a stadium, I think it would be bleacher seating. I think there would be a lot of private funding. That would probably be up to guys like David Tepper, what they want to do. Because at the end of the day, when they're given the most money, it's going to be up to them at the end of the day. Do they want individual seating or not? Everything I've been told is it's going to be through 43 to 48,000 seats. That's what I've been told. So it's going to be through there. There'll be a lot of private funding. It'll probably be up to them. But if I had to bet, it would probably be bleacher seating because it would be cheaper. But hey, guys like David Tepper could be saying, hey, I'm spending $800 million to $1 billion. I want individual seating. It could be that. And the D-line recruiting is down in this class. Should Becky be concerned with Doust? Let me take a look at this class here. That's a great question. Let me see here. $2025 commits. Let me see here. For starters, I mean, when it comes to recruiting this year, the DB room is through the roof. I mean, the DB class is going to be insane. When it comes to the D-line room, let's see here. We got Trevor Summers from Fort Lauderdale, obviously from St. Thomas Aquinas. I think it's a great pickup. I think he has the potential to be a 4-star. That's how good he is. That's one. Julian Anderson. I think Julian Anderson may be a defensive end when he comes here. I'm not concerned about that. That's the same thing when they talked about how Kalijah Kancey was a 3-star, low 3. Kalijah Kancey was a low 3-star. He was a 5.5. He did really well. I'm not concerned about that. Let's go through here a little bit more. I think those are really the two, potentially three defensive linemen. They may add one more defensive lineman, but you guys got to remember too. I mean, we've taken about 3 or 4 defensive linemen for consecutive years. You know what I mean? Like we had a lot of defensive linemen this year. Francis Brayu, Jasir Whittington, Tyler Uhas. Who else is in that group? There's one more because we had 4 in that group this year. There's a lot of guys are taking overall, and obviously too, if there's a guy they don't like, they're not going to grab him, and then guess what? They're going to go in the portal. So at the end of the day, I think the overall D line group, I am not concerned about it. To be quite honest with you, I think there's a lot more potential there than what people think. I would put 54,000 worth of seats in. I think we have to match what the view has. Talk is Pitt. No. You know, West Virginia has 60,000. They can't fill their own stadium without Pitt being there. Just like how, Pitt needs, obviously, West Virginia and Penn State, a lot like that. 54,000. We were averaging 54,000 in winning years turning 2021 and 2022, but I don't agree with that. I think you can be expandable at 55,000, but Pitt should have, in my opinion, in a perfect world, that 43 to 48,000, preferably a bit like that 40 in a perfect world, 45 to 46,000. That's just my opinion. I think that would be a home run for them. And once they build their fan base even more, then you can expand it. But they need a smaller stadium overall. And even 48,000. 48,000 takes 22,000 seats out of Acrisure. I mean, it would be a major help. W took down their lights and put new ones on. Yeah. Yeah, the DB class is really nice. Just keep reloading 100%. Archie Collins and Corey Sanders are the 2 best recruiters on this staff. Third would be Ryan Manilak. And then guess what? After those 1, 2, 3, then there's the field. It's those 3 guys and then the field. And then I think Cade Bell has been doing a really good job of building up that offensive talent. You look at Pitt's class on offense, man. He has got guys with speed. Jakirian Turner out of Florida. Obviously, Demarion Fulks from Maryland. Guys, he's going to be a stud at the wide receiver position. I can tell you that. Bryce Yates out of Chesterfield, Virginia. He'll be really good. These guys overall, one thing that's been really noticeable is that they all have speed. Tony Kinsler, he'll be a running back. He's ranked 5.7. He'll get that bump. I expect him to be a 4-star. I expect Demarion Fulks to be a 4-star. Sean Lee, who is from Harrisburg, his numbers, he's 6'1", he'll play DB. How he's only a 5.5, I have no idea what the hell they're doing there. His number says he should be a 5'7" or a 5'8", 5'7", 3-star, or 5'8", 4-star. I mean, that's kind of just common sense. I think you guys will be really shocked at how good Shep Turk, offensive lineman from TJ, 6'5", 275, put in a year with the Pitt Ironworks. He'll be over 300 in no time. Obviously, the quarterback in this class, Mason Heinschel. Again, I'm pronouncing his name wrong, and I apologize, Mason. Mason is going to be a tremendous quarterback. He continues to show a big arm, lively arm, but more importantly, a dual threat quarterback, which I think is a major need in this offense. I think when it comes to a dual threat quarterback, I think Eli Holstein's more of a dual threat than Nate Yarnell, but Nate Yarnell can certainly throw the ball. He's got a big arm. The young man's got a big arm on him. Let's just all agree that Dracovic, the SIG era was trash. Cade Bell looks promising. Just hope it doesn't end up like Frog Graham situation. Pick use explosive offense again. I can tell you this: it's not going to be Todd Graham because these are 2 very different up-tempo offenses. I can tell you that, very different. In terms of a running game, I think it's a pro-style running game. When you want to compare a passing game, go watch the Tennessee Volunteers. Their head football coach. Heupel. I can't remember his first name, but Heupel down in Tennessee. That's the offense you want to watch in terms of passing game. That's how good it's going to be. Some of the stats for our players should make them 4-stars, when Sean Fitzsimmons was in high school with 18 plus sacks and 15 solo tackles. Couldn't agree more. Overall, it's duly noted. Josh Heupel. Thank you, Daniel. Josh Heupel. Yes. A guy to watch in terms of passing game. That's how good of an offense he runs, and that's really what Pitt's going to run. Also, in the ACC news, the last topic of the night, I know we're reaching an hour. We'll go over a little over an hour. Guys, there is so much BS in terms of what's going around with the overall topics of conference realignment, private equity money, all this stuff. I can promise you this: I would be absolutely shocked. The only way that Florida State and Clemson would leave the ACC to go to the Big 12 is if indeed they got $30 million more than every other Big 12 team. Which, if you're an ACC fan, you're rooting for that, because what that means is each team in the Big 12 would have to forfeit $5 to $6 million of their own profits because of the unequal revenue sharing, which I don't see happening. If they didn't do it with Texas and Oklahoma, they're not doing it with Clemson and Florida State, and they certainly don't move the needle in terms of finding a way to get them a new contract, which they've already signed. Just not going to happen. Have you won a national championship with Pitt on NCAA 25? Adam, crazy thing is about this, I still don't have a console. I don't have a PlayStation console, and I don't even have the game yet because I have been so busy with work. Guys, I have been doing so many podcasts. My career is just so busy. I was at my office today from 9 to 5. It's been, I slept in for an extra hour today to go to my office about 9 o'clock this morning before the Pirate game started so I can get in there and park before everybody else got there. My schedule was just through the roof. I mean, the amount of just time that I work on in my career, what that asks for to be successful and be elite at what I do, but more importantly, just the podcast in general. So I haven't even got to play it, guys. So I am jealous. If you have gotten to play this game, let me know. But I have seen the portals. Wow, does the game look awesome? And again, Adam, to answer your question, I plan on buying the game because that's one game that I will actually go buy a console for, so I can actually play the game. It's that good. If I'm able to get Pitt and WU tickets this year, Dev have to see you, man. Daniel, let me know if you're able to get tickets and you're able to go to the game. Let me know. We can certainly do a meetup. My schedule has been so crazy, and again, I didn't even get to do the Permane stuff this year, where we had a Talking College Football meet and greet. I mean, it's just been so through the roof, just how busy the summer has been this year. I changed organizations. I changed from one bank to another. That was just crazy. It's been wild, to say the least. So I didn't get to do that this year, so I was upset about that. But if you get to go to the game, let me know. I love walking around the tailgates and meeting people. The kicking shit should be hard with your 50 yards plus out. Yeah, 100%. Feels like a bunch of wannabe reporters hop on X every 5 minutes to post some BS about the powerful Big 12 empire, LOL. Guys, the amount of just bullshit that the Big 12 pushes on a day in, day out basis. I mean, and, I've been level-headed about it. That's why I had David McKenzie on. He talked about how, like, for instance, the first thing he even said, if you hear people talking about, well, there's going to be 6 teams that lead the ACC, how the hell could you potentially even know that when the lawsuits are still going on? If it's $200 million or more, I'd say even $100 million or more, schools are not going to leave. They can't, because no one's going to pay that. On top of now, we have revenue share. We have revenue sharing of $20 million a year from institutions now. I mean, just some of the stuff that pops out is just comical, and it's so illogical because there's no actual thought process behind it, and the financials don't add up. Like, I mean, to leave the conference from what David McKenzie, who I interviewed. If you've not seen the interview, guys, for David McKenzie, it's in my portal on my YouTube page. It's FSU. It's the a legal update with FSU and Clemson. Guys, I suggest you watch it. It's 45 minutes of great questioning, but guess what? Even better responses. And again, I'm going to have David McKenzie back on because he does bring a valuable asset to the show, his knowledge. But if you have not watched that, it's 45 minutes of pure facts, and it's been both sides. So at the end of the day, that'll give you a lot of answers. But overall, guys, I don't see the ACC collapsing because, one, that every decision in conference realignment or in general, guys, let's be honest, business overall is based on money. The ACC network is generating hundreds of millions of dollars, not in revenue, in profit. Under no circumstance is ESPN going to allow that to fail. But more importantly, what world would they allow Florida State and Clemson or a UNC or Virginia to leave their conference to go somewhere else so they can pay them more money? It's just not going to happen. It's just not. It's illogical. But also, too, to front the money to get out. If it's truly $400 or $500 million, no one's paying that shit. I'm sorry, you guys. These are not Fortune 500 companies. These are nonprofits. They can't do it. They will literally flounder. They will die off. And what I try to tell people is, I think at a certain time, and people call me crazy about this, I said that Florida State and Clemson wouldn't get out till 2028, 2029. And the reason for that is it'll be less of a buyout. But also, too, if they go to the Big Ten or the SEC, they're not going to get a full share. They're going to have to take 30 cents, 40 cents on the dollar. Go look at Oregon and Washington. Oregon and Washington left because they had no TV contract. The ACC has 15 years left on its grant of rights, guys. When you hear someone compare the Pac-12 to the ACC, immediately they're just throw their opinion out the window. Because if they're comparing those two conferences, they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. One conference literally did not have a media rights deal in place. They had to move. If Oregon and Washington had stayed with the Pac-12, the Pac-12 would still be alive today. They would still be alive today. But guess what? The Apple offer came in lower than what ESPN originally offered because the Pac-12 and their commissioner was absolutely atrocious. And that will be, by the way, in universities, that will be a case study of how bad a commissioner can be in college athletics. That will go down as one of the worst displays of being a commissioner in college athletics history. I mean, the Pac-12 dissolved because of itself. They should have accepted ESPN's offer right away, and the Pac-12 would still be alive today. Oregon State and Washington State would still be Power 5 schools. Now they're stuck, like Oregon State and Washington State, they're stuck in the West Coast Conference, whatever the hell it's called. I mean, luckily, they're going to get good money from the CW to survive, but, I mean, they're not in a Power 4 conference. They can't win their conference and go to the college football playoff. They need a lot of help. They got to schedule hard-ass games. That's how it goes. But overall, when you look at this from a real live perspective, I do not see the ACC falling apart. I do see at some point Florida State and Clemson getting out. But this facade of like, we're going to know where they're going August 15th. Guys, if you watch the actual interview with David McKenzie, he even says, we haven't even gotten a written response from Florida State in the Florida case. We're more than likely going to get a decision from North Carolina and their Supreme Court in the coming months, which will favor the ACC. God bless these teams, man. And I think if you're Florida State and Clemson, where are you going to go? You can't go to the Big Ten of the SEC because they're not looking to move right now. And guess what? Let's say if they do get out. Let's say they do get out next year. Let's play devil's advocate and really get dicey here. Let's say they get out. How can they go to the SEC or the Big Ten if they're going for 30 cents on the dollar like Washington and Oregon? They can't afford it. So you're going to spend $400 million to go make 30 cents on the dollar with the Big Ten or SEC? They can't pay that. They can't afford that. That's less money than they're making with the ACC. And you're not going to pay $400 million to go to the Big 12 to make the same money you're making now. Makes no sense. And I think a lot of things don't align with the Big 12. Now, Yormark, I would think he'll probably try with private equity money, but it's just not going to work. Because overall, guys, I'm in the financial markets, man. I got news for you. You get private equity money, you're basically saying your market's here, but we think it can go up to here. If it's here and it goes down even just a little bit, you're going to owe millions of dollars. And private equity said it best, and I love this comment. If they do well, then we do well. Well, guess what? How it works. If they do bad, then if we do bad, they're going to do bad. That's how it works. To be honest, I think is all shit for every conference until it actually comes out and it's signed. When and who do you think ACC will add? Adam, to be honest with you, I think when Florida State and Clemson, when and if they do get out, I think the first two people or two institutions they're going to look at is USF, because one, they have a massive alumni base. It's in the Tampa area to replace, Florida State, which obviously USF is not as big in terms of football and whatnot as Florida State. But the Florida market, USF, they're actually building their own on-campus stadium right now. They've invested over $500 million into football. They would be a good ad. Also, too, Oregon State to match up with California and Stanford. I expect them to jump on board, even potentially at Washington State. Those three. And then obviously, too, the other one that's currently being looked at is Memphis because they have a lot of NIL money. So I think those are really the four teams you have to watch. And then there's still a lot of conversations behind closed doors about Utah potentially leaving and getting a full share. What it comes down to, I've told people, Brett, when you look at Commissioner Jim Phillips, he's working and negotiating right now at ESPN to say, hey, if we add more teams, and let's say they're Power 5 teams or Power 4 teams, we want to be able to add teams and get a full share. If that happens, you may see some Power 4 teams come across. I'm just telling you. Can't understand why ESPN just won't save ACC with the look-in. Football, hockey, you might have to retype that. For me, I think it's a no-brainer. I think ESPN's going to extend it. But right now, they're negotiating. They're negotiating the terms of in terms of what's the share look like for a team that gets added? Is it a full share? Is it half share? There's a lot of negotiation going on right now. That's why it hasn't been exercised yet. But I expect them to exercise it. Well, guys, we are an hour and 11 minutes in. If there's a couple more questions, I'll take them. If not, that'll be it. Guys, if you have not done so, again, please go below. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button if you have not done so. It helps out with the algorithm. But more importantly, share this with your friends. Create a dialogue. I love seeing the comment section after this is done because it's really good to see the overall thoughts and reactions of what you guys think. And it's always a good time to watch it. And certainly answer the comments back and forth. Well, I don't see any more comments, guys. So, again, this has been another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Guys, we had, again, tonight, over 650 people join the live show. The show is always good, not because of me, but because of you, because you guys ask great questions. The Sunday Conversation weekly has turned into a phenomenon. Mark, again, thank you so much. Great show again. Guys, the show is great, not because of me, because of you, because of the interactions that you guys bring, the great comments that you guys bring, the great questions you guys bring. And again, we continue to grow at a rapid rate because the Sunday Conversation is driving so much conversation because it's a live Q&A. When there's something on your mind, you ask it in the comment section. I try to get to every single question and every single comment. That's something I pride myself on to go through in and out. Guys, as always and forever, it's truly a blessing to talk to you guys. And guess what? Pitt football is less than a week. Well, I guess technically a week away from reporting for fall camp. Fall camp will open up not this coming Monday, but next Monday they report. It'll be a great time. Football is almost back. We'll be talking about August football. Pat Narduzzi meeting with the media. Also, too, the Pat Narduzzi goatee will be coming back, too, as well. During camp season, we'll get to see the quarterback play. We'll get to see Cade Bell running his offense. The conference realignment conversation will stop for at least 2 or 3 months. Guys, college football is almost back. We are coming to the end of July. So, guys, again, thank you for another episode of Talking College Football. As always and forever, hail to Pitt. And to all my ACC followers, hail to the ACC. Thank you, guys. And again, I'll see you next time.